I installed this new hardwood flooring at my mom's 3-level townhouse as one of my first DIY flooring projects. The builder carpeted floor went from looking like this to this to this within several weekends of fun work. I first reinforced and leveled the builder's OSB subfloor in another video linked below. But first, I will show you the installation process in this part of the project, which is the upstairs stair, landing, and hallway area. I avoided installing flooring boards in a way that would create seams between the two ends of adjacent boards around the middle of the entryway into another room. Where possible, I used a full-length board in the entryway, such as when the tongue of the board was facing out of the room and could be slid into the doorway with its ends outside the doorframe. I also avoided using shorter pieces, creating more seams and board ends in the middle of the room and hallway. I saved those shorter boards for less visible areas, such as adjacent to walls where furniture would normally cover them. I also avoided using multiple short boards close together in the same part of the floor. I used the miter saw, table saw, and jigsaw to cut the boards as needed for this project. I made sure that the ends of two adjacent boards were more than 4 inches apart. Normally, you would remove the skirting baseboards before installing new hardwood flooring, but I decided to leave them in place. I did leave about 1/3 of an inch expansion gap around the perimeter of the room to allow for flooring board expansion and contraction, and I covered that expansion gap after finishing the flooring installation with a simple doorstop trim, which in the end looked like it was part of the original baseboard. I used a good wood glue to help me glue smaller pieces to the adjacent rows, which were nailed in using the powerful flooring nailer. The builder used an aluminum threshold where the tile met the original carpet. The surface of the bathroom tile was at around 3/4 of an inch above the subfloor, and the oak flooring boards I used were also 3/4 inch thick. I still had to adjust the level of the subfloor adjacent to the tile threshold using good quality roofing felt, which was thick enough to only need 2 to 4 layers underneath my flooring boards to bring the surface of the boards at exactly the same level as the surface of the tile. For a cleaner, more modern hardwood to tile transition, I decided not to use a transition piece running parallel to the tile, which contractors normally use to help them level and align the boards that run perpendicular to the tile threshold. There are special tools used to measure irregular areas, such as around door frames, but I did not find that necessary here since I had pre-cut the door frames just above the surface of the hardwood board without needing an exact cut of the boards. I used a flooring nailer hooked up to a compressor and 16-gauge 2-inch L-cleats for the installation of the 3/4 inch thick flooring boards. I nailed the powerful L-cleats at about 5 to 8 inches apart and not less than half an inch from each end of each board. I ensured that the first board meeting the stair landing nosing piece was exactly at a 90-degree angle. I used a Ryobi brad nailer with 18-gauge 2-inch nails in addition to manual hammering to blind nail the first and last rows along walls where the flooring nailer would not fit. Now 18-gauge brad nails are not strong enough for 3/4 inch hardwood flooring, but I made sure to limit the use of the brad nailer to areas where 16-gauge L-cleats from the nailer were not that far away, or I would use manual nails and hammer them in where necessary. The laundry closet had a raised tile floor, so I had to use a transition piece at the tile threshold, which was simply an oak trim piece which I finished to match the pre-finished hardwood flooring. I had to manually chisel away some of the OSB subfloor in this area to make sure that my flooring rows align with my nosing piece perfectly. I cut the door frames using my handsaw and multi-tool, which I placed over a scrap flooring board to ensure I was cutting the door frames at the right height above the subfloor. The direction of the row installation does matter based on the direction of the joists underneath the subfloor, which is determined using a stud finder along the ceiling of the house level below the floor in question. The direction of the flooring boards has to run perpendicular to the joists. In the description below, I'm linking separate videos on subfloor leveling and reinforcing, cutting the door frames, installing tricky first and last flooring rows, building stair landing nosings from flooring boards, and more. There are specialized compression tools available for last row installation, which I probably should have obtained to save me some time when installing the tricky last rows. I made it work with a little bit more trouble and more time. I decided not to obtain a more powerful nail gun than my Ryobi brad nailer, since this seemed like a pretty small townhouse project, but I did regret this decision in the end when I calculated the time I would have saved had I been using a proper nail gun, as it would eliminate the need for manual hammering in long nails next to walls where I couldn't get a good swing on my hammer, not to mention having to pre-drill each hole for manual nailing. The 18 gauge brad nailer, it did help me keep the boards in place at least during the installation process itself. I can't speak to the longevity of the 2-inch brad nails holding down the thick boards over many years, since I did add quite a few manually hammered in nails and may have gone a little overboard. I still thoroughly enjoyed this DIY project and don't see myself ever hiring someone else at my own house, where the square footage is considerably larger than what's in this video. I do love woodworking, and I ended up building several landing stair nosings like the one shown here. And down below, I'm also sharing a video on trim and baseboard installation. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my other videos related to this project, as well as my other interior and exterior DIY videos, all linked in the description below. I love to hear from my viewers. Please send me a comment with any questions or suggestions. Thank you for watching!